Hey, I'm Decathlon Gamer, and welcome to a Pro Cycling Manager 2023 tutorial on scouting. Now, within the network of scouting, I'm going to also cover two other closely related topics, one being the U23 teams, and two, what you need to know about new riders entering the game or within the database, aka Newgens. Let's start with the staff and what you need to know about the specific scouts that are available. As you go into the new staff category and the scout tab, you can organize them by reputation. Legendary is the best available scouts that are out there, but not all scouts are created the same. Even two legendary scouts are very different from one another within this game, which is one thing I really like about them. After legendary comes international scouts, and then lastly you have your national and regional scouts. Now, these four levels of reputation do come with essentially different perks, but they ultimately are created the same. A regional scout is going to do the same purpose. They're going to serve the same function as a legendary scout. A legendary scout is just going to do it better. A national scout is going to do it slightly better than a regional scout. Breaking down the differences between them are going to come down to a couple factors. One, the detail of territories. I'll break that down shortly. But you can see a regional scout, this one, Dormant from France, is just a level 2 France. That is his base knowledge. He can increase that with experience, but it's going to max out. In fact, it's going to max out at a 3. A national scout is going to have different detail of different territories, and sometimes even 3 territories or just 2 territories, but it is absolutely going to split what it is that they know. International scouts are still in that 2 or 3 regions that they are familiar with, but they have higher quality, and of course with experience will get even better within those regions. And then of course lastly, the legendary ones, they're going to have the most detail about the most territories, which is also going to make them more efficient within the scouting process itself. They're going to get you more reports. Now, of course, what matters here beyond just the reputation is that nation of origin. They are going to be tied to their region. A Venezuelan is going to have their base knowledge in South America. And so if you're on the cheaper end because you're on a budget, you're just starting out within the game, you've got a continental team and can't afford the best scouts, getting someone within the region you want to scout that particular region is going to be far more effective at getting results. Of course, once you get to the scouting itself, you're going to start picking up those reports on the region that they are assigned at the beginning of the year. That gets locked in January, and they have a workload. And each region within the world has different workload. As you look at, say, the United Kingdom and Ireland, the British Isles is one region that you look, and they're going to get results both in the UK and within Ireland. My particular scouts have no knowledge of the territory, but the workload to scout that is 3, meaning it would take Ryan Brown 3 of his total possible workload to scout the British Isles. Real quickly on the Newgens and what you're going to get coming out of these scouting reports can vary wildly. You're going to get better riders from different nations because each nation has this function. And actually, if you've not seen my series, I strongly recommend it because you're going to learn a lot about how this part happens, the training structure and the popularity of cycling. This is dynamic, it can change, but the popularity piece is going to determine how many juniors are showing up within the database, how many are created on a yearly basis, and then the training structure is the quality of those riders. Now, not quality does not necessarily mean how good they are day one. It has a lot to do with what their potential will be eventually. Now, as my playthrough is set up within Africa, my scouts are African, and they are scouting just the 2 regions that Africa is split up into, Africa North, Africa South, and I have 1 assigned to each. But as you can see here in the north, Eritrea might be the best at a 4.7, but that's not all of the other nations that are here. Burkina Faso is just a 5.1. Morocco is a 4.3. Algeria is a 4.1. So each nation is going to produce different riders based on those two criteria. But my scout is going to get varying quality or quantity of reports dependent on a couple of factors. My scouts, as they are just national level quality, the less work you force them to do, because they have a workload they can handle. Each of these can do up to 6 work, but by doing 3 or less, I'm going to actually improve their efficiency, and so they are going to detect more riders when they have a reduced workload, meaning you're going to get more reports coming out of somebody who is not overworked. So if you can keep them at half or less, they're going to get a major efficiency bonus, and so that means more scouts will do more work for you. Unfortunately, you have a limit of just 4 scouts that you can have, so you can't quite scout the entire world, which is sad, because it would actually be really nice if you could eventually have enough scouts to scout throughout the world, have enough scouts to have double efficiency, and you could get a lot of reports coming back. But as there is a limitation, you do have to be careful and pick and choose what it is that you want. The most efficient options are to scout regions that have the best training structure and or popularity, but the training structure is definitely the most important one, so that's going to get you the best riders, and then getting the best bonuses to increase the report level of what you're getting. So here within Africa, you can see Africa North, I have a 5 and an 8. Now what this is a combination of factors. One of those is the quality of scout and their knowledge of the region. Africa South for our South African scout. So he is literally from there. That's his home. And so he's better at scouting it, but as he's not of the highest reputation, he's not the most efficient. And so he started at a 1 or a 2. He is maxed out. He's got advanced knowledge of 3. So he contributes 3 points out of a possible 10 points to our knowledge of the region. That's 3 points. We have 5 additional points. Where do those come from? And here's that confirmation. This is the North region. So within the North region, we have 3 for our other scout. And then we also, and there's a description as you hover over them, we have a bonus of 2 points because I have 2 quality riders from the region on my team. Likewise, I also have a bonus 2 points for the quantity of riders that I have from the region on the team. So I suppose I'm really only picking up 1 point for each of these 2 categories. Now in the Africa South region, the only reason why I have anything additional because we have those same bonuses that are applied here, and we have the same scouting level. But what we have here is that is our team headquarters. The team is based in South Africa, and therefore we have a bonus for the home region, which gave an additional 3 points. It's early in the year, so I will have to bring up a little bit of stock footage at some point while I'm explaining this portion to show you some higher levels of detection. But we're going to work a little bit right to left here briefly to go over what you need to know regarding this portion, which is the report screen. It's very useful to organize by scout at times because there's an extra element that we're going to get to here in a moment, which I just got my latest reports in on this calendar day, so I actually have a task to do here in the next little bit, which is certainly going to be helpful for me. But level of detection is the big key here on why you have knowledge on some riders but not others. And there are 10 levels of detection, so there are 10 certain keys to a report. A level 1 report is just name and the specialty or qualities of a rider is labeled here. And so here you can see a level 1 report. We have a name. It does include where they're from, their age, and what their specialties are, but we have no other information regarding this rider. Beginning at level 2 detection, and there are times where you're going to get more than one level of detection by your scout, but Knowledge is something that increases and improves over time as your scout goes out and finds out information. Now, this is something that's going to tick over kind of at various dates, and you're going to get certain amounts of information coming back. It's very early, but I've already got 30 plus in terms of the amount of information coming back from each of my 2 scouts. Level 2 detection, you're now going to get 1/3 of all attributes coming back. So you're going to know a little bit about the rider. As there are 14 attributes to know, that means you're going to either get 4 or 5 of the attributes revealed. A level 3 detection now reveals what their current evaluation is out of 6 stars. Level 4 is going to get you the next third of the attributes. Level 5 detection is the first key one. This is where you can start to make judgments about a rider on whether they are worth signing or not. Those first 4 levels of detection don't do much for you at all. But beginning at level 5 detection, you're going to get an approximate potential for the rider. This is where you can really start to key in on whether you need to continue scouting a rider or whether you can move on and ignore them the rest of the year. 6th stage of detection is going to get the last of the attributes, the current attributes revealed. And then 7 is now the biggest key of all, because you can accurately make a signing at this point, because the biggest thing that you want to know about these riders is what their potential is. These are young riders. They are not meant to be your here and now. It really doesn't matter if they're good or not right now. And so a lot of those first reveals are going to come down to that stage 7 of detection, where you lock in what their actual overall potential is. Stage 8 of detection is the approximate potential within specific roles. As in, it's a 4-star climber, but only a 3.5-star stage racer. Stage 9 is where you're going to get the actual potential for half of the specializations. And at stage 10, you're going to get the full potential for the rest of the specializations. It's nice to have that piece. It's nice to know that your 5-star potential overall rider is not just a bare door and or time trialist who's going to be less important for you, and to know in those 8th, 9th, and 10th revelations that you're getting somebody who's going to be a 5-star climber or a 5-star stage racer, 5-star Northern Classics kind of rider, and something more useful. So it's nice to have those last 3 stages, but really the biggest key is stage 7. Stage 5 is really handy along the way. Stage 10 is also handy to know fully everything about them, but 7 is easily the most important. But like I said, this happens in stages, and you can see right from here the stages that we are working with. The first detection period for your scouts, the first return of reports, is going to happen following the 11th of January. The next period is exactly 2 weeks later on the 25th of January, and then you have the 8th. It's every 2 weeks. So as you go through every 2 weeks, you're going to have a new detection period. I've just had my latest detection period, so we had a lot of updated reports here. And that takes you into this next piece, which is observation. Meaning, when you have an active observation, your scout is going to prioritize that particular rider to gain more knowledge about them. This is a very useful tool to get after the riders that you want to know. If you have a stage 5 detection and you have somebody that you want to find out whether they're as good as predicted, then you want to use an observation. So this is a really useful tool. I always have this one set, but we just passed the last period, so I need to pick who it is that I want to know more about at this point, which now brings us to an important stage of what we have here. You have riders that are 16, 17, or 18 years of age in the juniors category. Knowing about a 16-year-old is not helpful, not useful. Knowing 17 and 18-year-olds can be useful. Now, the reason why it can be and not automatically is that 17-year-olds may or may not be someone that you can sign, Depends on when they turned 17. If they turned 17 at the end of February, then I will not be able to sign them at the end of the year because they will not turn 18 until next year. But if they turned 17 last year some point, they will definitely turn 18 at some point this year. And you can only sign riders that are 18 or older. So I tend to use a filter for age. I'll set it to 18 and search. But oh no, here's a real problem on my hands. Now I only have 2 riders that are showing up on my search. So what I end up doing is very early on, I'm going to look at 17-year-olds and know that in all likelihood, these guys turned 17 December or earlier. They turned 17 in the year 2025, and that they will certainly turn 18 before the end of this year. So in the very early portion of a year, I'll search 17-year-olds only until some of these riders begin to turn 18. And that population, that list of 18-year-olds begins to populate a little bit. From that point on, the remainder of the year, I'll only look at the 18-year-olds because they're the only ones I can sign, and that's why I do that. I'll ignore the younger riders. There's nothing I can do with them. And especially as I only have 2 scouts of low quality, I'm not going to get as many. My feedback loop is going to be longer and less productive, less efficient. And so I need to be efficient in how I use my observations. Now, in who I choose, obviously once I get to level 5 detection, my choices are going to be based on who has high potential versus who doesn't. I'm going to leave those ones out. But until I get to level 5 detection, how do I make decisions on who to get after? Well, I get after the ones that are more useful to my team, meaning their specialization. So I'm going to be paying attention to who has qualities I need, i.e. climbers and or time trialists, so stage racers, or classics riders. Especially with my team right now, I'm desperate for cobbled riders. Another thing I'm desperate for is sprinters, so I wouldn't mind finding a good sprinter. The other piece about the observations they need to know is that the observations are done by each individual scout, and they can only do one specialization, one pick per 2-week period at a time. So each of them is going to get to do one. And so for Brown, I'm going to choose the one who is both a mountain climber and a cobble rated rider. That seems like a good combination for me, and that's going to be done in the next 2-week period. Let's see how that's 2 weeks after the previous one. I'm going to pick one for this guy. We have somebody that we already know a bit about, cobbled rider and sprinter, and that's definitely something I need. So we'll go ahead and start with that one. I'm going to pick a backup as well for the next period. You can see how it falls in 2 weeks later. And somebody who's got that combination of mountain, punch, and time trial could be pretty useful for us. Little handy tool here, you can move them up or down to change the order of the priorities. So you can prioritize one over another without having to go back and reset. And that's what you need to know about the reports page. And one of the reasons why you want to ignore 16-year-olds is that within the database, the amount of Newgens there are is incredible. It's a lot. The amount that actually go pro is a much smaller sample size. Many of the 16-year-olds that you see will not be in the database a year from now. Many of those 17-year-olds you'll see will not make it. It's more important to focus on the 18-year-olds that are there, and it is also one of the chief reasons why scouting does, at least to an extent, matter. You can get by without it and just go through, search nation by nation, rider by rider, and see what quality is there. It'll be revealed to everyone who's already 18 plus and professional. But to ensure that a rider makes it from new gen status into the actual pro ranks, scouting is what's required to help ensure that. And then there's 2 ways to bring them into that professional status. Method number 1 is through a U23 team. Now, the reason to have a U23 team is to take young riders with high potential that aren't good enough to be on your team right now and give them a home. Give them a place where they will grow and develop as riders and get experience as riders to help reach potential. What that does is twofold. One, you get eyes on, you see just how good they are, you see how well they develop, and come August the 1st, you'll have that that opportunity to sign them if you want, or retain them on your U23 team for another year if they are young enough to do so. But beyond that, what it does is it also ensures that they are going to make that professional jump. They'll make the jump into the professional ranks. They won't disappear out of the database. That could be an important key for potential future signings. Now, here's the thing. The downside is it's not cheap. Their salary is $1,000 a month. The minimum salary that you can sign somebody for is $2.5. You're going to save $1.5K on each rider that you have. However, there are operating costs for your U23. So by the time you add the operating costs on top of those salaries, those riders are going to cost more or as much as a minimum salary. Depends on how big. There's different combinations in terms of the number, and those different combinations come with different operating expenses as you go along. The second way to ensure that a rider does not disappear and retire or move on to some other career as they exit the juniors, one way to ensure that they actually do become a professional is to just straight up sign them to your roster. They're going to have low quality. They are only a domestique. You're going to have to find races to squeeze them into here and there, and you're going to have to sign them for theoretically a minimum contract of $2,500. But it's actually the best way to ensure that they do become professional and does essentially work better or in the same function that a U23 team provides as a resource. Purpose number one for why you do all this is to, through scouting, through signing of young talent, is to ensure that the best talent is kept alive within the database, that you can get them to your team sooner. If you don't scout, what you're risking is A, other teams getting them, and B, no one getting them because they don't go professional, because they end up flying under the radar and don't get signed or picked up by any of the teams, especially if you do a similar challenge to what I do, like a build a continent, build Africa, or build South America, or build Asia type series. If you're sticking to one region, one nation, one continent, whatever it may be, if you're not wide open to just taking the best riders available, which is the standard way to play, but if you're going to do something a little more specialized, you are always running the risk of losing out on riders entirely by not using the scouting system. It is somewhat costly, but there's absolutely a give and take, and getting first dibs on those riders and bringing them into your team before anybody else is something that feels good as you're going through and utilizing the system. One last thing on your U23 team, for anyone who's unfamiliar with it, I'm not going to go into much depth regarding what it is or how the U23 team functions. However, it does have a yearly mid-October period where you go through and have a draft. So the number of spots that you have, it drafts 3 at a time. You put your 3 in, it's going to take 3 from everybody at that same time. If you're a lower reputation, somebody else is going to have dibs. So if you pick a rider and some other team picks the same rider, if you have the higher reputation, you're going to get them. If they have the higher reputation, they will be the ones signing that rider. So it is possible to miss out on them. So make sure that the first 3 that you select are the 3 that you want the most, that have the most potential. Doesn't guarantee that you're going to get them, but it definitely increases the odds, because as the draft goes on, those are going to disappear rather quickly, as if they didn't get swept up in the first round, they're probably going to get swept up in the second round. Each team drafts 3 at a time per round until each of the teams end up filling up. Prior to the draft, you have a period of possible retentions. You can choose which of your pre-existing riders from the previous year's team you want to retain for the coming year, as long as they are not signing a professional contract with someone, and as long as they are still age eligible to exist in the U23s. So they need to be under 23. That is going to do it for this tutorial on scouting. Hopefully that is helpful to explain what it is, what it does, where it's useful for you, and I wish you luck with it. You'll find a pattern that works, but for me the big key is get them to that stage 5 so you have an idea of what their potential is. Get the ones that have the best profiles in terms of style, and then from stage 5 to stage 7 get the ones with the high potential. possible potential to lock in what that actual potential is. And then if you're getting down to it late in the season, you're trying to decide which two to sign, and you've got a pool of 4, scout them up to that level 10 so you know exactly what each of the 4 offer, and then you can make that decision, that call on which 2 prospects you want to bring in and which to bring into your U23s, or to put all 4 in your U23s instead of bringing them straight into the senior squad. That's going to do it for this one. I'm Decathlon Gamer. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Have a good one. Be safe out there. Bye for now.